listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting us spend some time with you. I am being carefully monitored and supervised.
Yes, you are. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
You're in a good mood this morning.
Yes, I am.
Oh, my. All kinds of good stuff going on around the world, but we're going to ignore that for a while. If you haven't been to givegod90.com lately, you might want to check that out. Author Jerry Mitchell's where the books are sold. Make sure you hit those like buttons, share buttons, all those good things, because all of that helps make it easier for people to find us, just like you did. And it doesn't cost you anything. It's absolutely free. So what are you listening to? Nothing? Okay. She gets these looks, and it makes me wonder. If you're married, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Last time we looked at Daniel and how the Bible has proven itself over and over and over again to be reliable, both as a history book and as a guide for our lives. We're going to look at something a little different today. The people that put their faith in the Creator and in the Bible, they're often accused of, oh, you just have blind faith in a fairy tale. That's all it is. It's just a fairy tale. As I said, we looked at Daniel chapter 5, and, the Bible was right, and the accusers were, in fact, wrong, right? Because they said the last king of Babylon wasn't Belshazzar, but technically it was, because he was the one who was there. He was the actual king's son ruling in Babylon in his stead. So maybe it's time to turn the tables, right? Let's see if the evolutionists have a verifiable and documented proof of evolution, or are they the ones that believe in a fairy tale? I'm not sure anybody's ever tried that before. I think it has. I think it's been done, but not on the scale that I want to do it. The Bible is written in a way that it gives accurate history and an account of a specific group of people. Now, while it mentions other cultures and nations and some of their history, it actually focuses on the Hebrew people. The Bible doesn't directly address evolution because it begins with the creation count in a chronological order and assumes that people are going to read that and say, I believe it, right? So the only passages in the Bible that are actually applicable to the atheist or secular, including the evolutionists and the Big Bang folks, would be the ones that consider these things their own religion. And we'll get more on that in a moment if you want to read those passages that are pertaining to what we're going to look at.
You will inherit the lands of these nations. You must completely destroy all the places where they serve their gods. These places are on high mountains and hills and under every green tree. Tear down their altars, smash their holy stone pillars, burn the Asherah idols, cut down their idols, destroy their names from those places. Don't worship the Lord your God that way. They will be destroyed for you. Be careful not to be trapped by asking about their gods. Don't say, how do these nations worship? I will do the same. Don't worship the Lord your God that way. The Lord hates the evil ways they worship their gods. They even burn their sons and daughters as sacrifices to their gods. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 2 through 4 and 30 and 31.
Now, while the evolutionist folks, they don't have a church that they attend or an organized way of worshiping whatever they serve, they do treat evolution like a religion. And if you don't believe that, just ask one. Think about this. They tell you, well, if you don't believe my way, if you don't think like I do, then we're going to chastise you, we're going to persecute you, we're going to call you all kinds of bad names, and we're going to say you have blind faith in a fairy tale. They point to men like Charles Darwin and his book, and the whole title of that book, as I like to use, is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle of Life. I've talked at great length about this book and how Darwin himself stated, if anything can be shown in his findings that are not accurate, then he was wrong. Well, Darwin's been proven wrong by his own peers, although they don't want to admit it. You see, when Darwin wrote his book, he didn't know. He didn't have the tools that we have today. He didn't have the information about the proteins in a cell or how they work. He didn't know about DNA. He was simply guessing at what he observed over a very short period of time. Now, while many people make theories and assumptions and they speculate about an outcome of something, they might be thinking about wise people who do real research. And until they actually have proof that their theories and speculation is true, it's called a theory, right? Noah Webster defined theory as speculation, a doctrine or scheme of things which terminate in speculation or contemplation without a view to practice. Basically, it means it's a guess, right? It's a guess. Now, if you're as old as I am, you probably remember that in school your textbooks applied the name Big Bang Theory and the theory of evolution. The word theory has somehow disappeared, right? Right around the turn of the millennium, right around the year 2000, the word theory disappeared from these things. Now, it's supposed to be accepted as, evolution is proven. Well, no, it's not. The Big Bang has been proven. No, it hasn't. Today, these things are taught in public schools in the United States as gospel instead of theory, and there's reasons for that. Primarily because the people who believe the Bible failed. I just said something I shouldn't have said, right? The people who believe the Bible have failed when they use their attempts to prove the Bible true, instead of being able to use the Bible as their foundation of life and even of science. Unfortunately, many believers, Jewish and Christian today, are doing the same thing. Now, while Darwin's book may have helped evolution along, it wasn't until about 1931 when I'm going to ruin this name. I'll tell you right up front, I'm going to ruin this name. I believe it's pronounced Jorge Lemaitre. He was a Belgian cosmologist. He was also a Catholic priest. He's the one who introduced the Big Bang Theory. Can you imagine a Catholic priest who should have his foundation in creation said, well, millions of years ago, there could have been this big explosion where nothing exploded into something. I still have trouble wrapping my brain around that. If you have a vacuum of nothing, how can it explode into something? And if you remember, I suggested you do an experiment with that, right? And if you weren't listening to that, basically it was you pull a vacuum in a small chamber, because a vacuum is a vacuum. It doesn't matter if it's huge or if it's little. And you put that in the freezer. How long are you going to have to wait until you get even a single molecule of water? Right? Not going to happen. You're not even going to get a single atom out of it. Just can't be done. We need to ask why so many people choose to believe these theories instead of the Bible. The way that people were thinking about things began to change rapidly in the 19th century. There was an exchange of ideas that grew, and it grew because transportation was easier, communication was easier, and the Royal Society, which is the oldest national scientific society in the world, was putting out ideas that often contradicted the Bible. And they were using this thing called science, and they were supposed to be the smartest people in the country, and people believed whatever they had to say. Whatever they said. Because this was an intelligent group of people. But they would sit around and discuss things and come up with ideas, and all of a sudden it was accepted because, well, they said so. Isn't that amazing? But real science doesn't contradict the Bible. Real science needs to be observed, and the outcomes of the observations need to be repeatable every time. If it's not repeatable every time, it's not science, it's an accident. Let's use this analogy. I love analogies, right? If somebody wants to bake a cake for the first time, they're typically going to follow a recipe very closely, right? This is because the recipe is observable and it's repeatable. Now, once you kind of get used to it, some folks might choose to tweak that recipe a little bit. They might change, it might not suit their exact taste, so they're going to maybe add some extra sugar or take a little salt away, but it's basically the same thing. It's just tweaking it a little bit to suit your taste. But overall, baking a cake is observable and it's repeatable. It comes out the same way every time. Thomas Edison actually used this method when he was working on the light bulb. He tried a lot of different things. It didn't work. It didn't give him the repeatable outcome he desired. But when he did find a way to make the light bulb, it was observable. He was able to repeat it time after time after time. It eventually went into production, and we have electric lights today. And we often take these things for granted because, well, they're pretty much commonplace, right? One of the things that secular science uses to prove the Earth is millions of years old is known as carbon dating or radiometric dating, right? Bless you. What they don't tell you, though, is there is a huge, huge problem with this. Not only is this not observable, it is not repeatable. I just said something that a lot of scientists are going, well, of course it is. Well, no, it's not. It's not. Think about this. If you went to a doctor, and you say, doctor, I have a sore throat, right? Well, science tells us that it's most likely from a viral or bacterial cause. The doctor might prescribe an antibiotic or some other drug that's been used successfully before to eradicate any infection. But I doubt you would go back to that same doctor if he says, you've got a sore throat. Here's this cream for athlete's foot. Right? you probably wouldn't go back to him if your only complaint was a sore throat. But that's exactly what's happening with the way that science is treating the way they date objects. They're speculating or they're guessing at what the data reveals. Worse than that, they have no idea that the data they began with is actually accurate. Radioactive atoms such as uranium, which is considered a parent isotope, it decays into more stable atoms such as lead, which is considered a daughter isotope. And it decays at a very measurable rate. That way they say, oh, we know exactly how fast this happens, so we must be correct. Well, no, they're not, because the problem is just because we can measure a rate of decay, we don't know how much was there to begin with. You see, no geologist was present when most rocks formed. So they can't test whether the original rocks already contained the daughter isotopes alongside the parent radioisotopes. For instance, rocks that formed after the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 have been dated to be over 350,000 years old. Now, I know I'm not that old, and I was still in high school in 1980. I haven't been around for 350,000 years, and I don't think anyone else living today has been either, other than the Almighty himself. Here's another name that I'm going to ruin, because it's the name of a mountain in New Zealand, and I believe it's pronounced Ngauruhoe, Mount Ngauruhoe. It's a lava flow. You know, it's a kind of, if you see a picture of it, it's kind of a neat looking volcano. But it has a lava flow that we know is less than 50 years old, but it has yielded ages up to 3.5 million years. So the scientists are using flawed methods of dating rock samples, you know, and it's kind of like trying to bake a cake with no recipe, right? They're treating a sore throat with athlete's foot cream. And it's not that they don't have access to the tools we need today. What we have no access to is no one was able to accurately observe and measure the isotopes they use when the rocks were first formed. They don't have any idea how much of what goes into the recipe. To put it simply, we can turn the table on evolution with a couple of short questions. Where's the real proof? Where's the real proof? Who was there to observe a repeatable outcome of evolution? Who was there? Who saw it? Who saw it? Who observed the Big Bang? Who was there? And the one that really gets him in trouble is, how could a species survive unless two of the same species evolved at exactly the same time, one male and one female, so that they could reproduce? Now that question right there is the fairy tale. Oh, we started out in this primordial slime, and two things happened to crawl out of it at exactly the same time, one male and one female. That's a fairy tale. That is a fairy tale. You know, you've got to have a lot of faith. You've got to have a lot of faith in evolution to believe that a male and a female of any species simply evolved at exactly the same time and they were able to reproduce. And that's what makes evolution a religion, whether they like it or not. They're putting their faith in something that they can't see, they can't observe, it doesn't repeat. But compare that now compare what I just said. Their belief in a fairy tale, where no one was there to see it, no one was there to talk about it. Compare that to with what the Bible says. Who was there? Who was there to observe a repeatable outcome? Well, that's how the Bible starts. In the beginning, God. He was not only there to see it, he was there to create it. He was there to create the trees, the grass, the animals, and eventually mankind. He was there to create the reproduction cycles that perpetuate, I'm having trouble talking now, perpetuate the kinds of birds and the fish and the animals, the people, and it has an observable and repeatable outcome. Our Creator knows exactly how many radioisotopes of each kind there are in a rock, when it was made, because He designed it and He created it. Our Creator knows exactly, to the detail, how DNA and proteins work because He created it. It's His blueprint and it's His finished product. Compare to the Bible evolution and compared to the Bible, I should say, evolution and Big Bang have zero proof of anything because there was no one there to observe it. They're theories. They're only theories, and it's not even an educated guess. It's just, well, this could have happened. It's a guess. It's not real. They continue to change the subject, though. They try to avoid a direct answer. When you ask questions, they treat your question with disdain. They loathe anyone who dares to question their faith. Right? Their faith is in something I don't even know if we can call it any kind of a God. Because their faith is in really a misconstrued, flawed idea that has no foundation in history, can't be proven by its own science. It's been disproven time and time again by their own science. They might not believe in our Creator yet, but one day they will. They're going to be standing there on Judgment Day, and they're going to have more proof than they've ever seen on this earth. Their faith in a God that cannot see, cannot speak, cannot hear is going to fail them because it cannot save them from the Creator Himself. People who believe the Bible is true, they have no need to place some blind faith in a fairy tale because the Bible proves itself true. We don't need to prove it's true. It proves itself true. But the Big Bang and the evolutionists spent a lot of time, a lot of money, and a whole lot of frustration to prove the impossible. And they fooled a lot of people in the past, and they continue to fool a lot of people right now, every day. Their fairy tale requires you to put blind faith in their world of flawed science, to believe something that's neither observable nor repeatable. They want you to believe that you're here by some random chance of life that has no meaning, it's terminal, and when we die, it's simply over, right? But the Bible tells us we're here because we were created to be here, that life does have meaning and purpose. Life is eternal, not terminal, and when we leave this earth, there is much, much more. The religion of evolution has no future, and their view, in their view, mankind is God. It's hopeless and has a very bleak ending. Maybe that's why so many evolutionists are miserable, uncaring, unable to love, not in the way that believers do. But the people who choose our Creator, they've got their bad days, they've got their problems, but they're filled with joy. They look forward to the future. Typically, they're caring, and they're able to offer love. I'm going to close today with the words of Jeremiah 24:14 and 15. Joshua spoke to the people. He said, "You have heard the Lord's words, so you must respect the Lord and serve him fully and sincerely. Throw away the false gods that your people worshipped, that happened on the other side of the Euphrates River and in Egypt. Now you must serve the Lord." But maybe you don't want to serve the Lord. You must choose for yourselves today. You must decide who you will serve. You may serve the gods that your people worshipped when they lived on the other side of the Euphrates, or you may serve the gods of the Amorites who lived in the land. But as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. And part of serving means you need to be able to stand on his word. Because if you don't stand on his word, you are definitely going to fall down among the secular scientists of evolution and of Big Bang. So until next time, we do wish you many, many blessings, everyone.
Absolutely.